I want to kick this off with the twist. Was it Garville?
The twist.
Yeah, the twist. So the twist, because this is what really confused me about the first book, and the first sentence. What was it?
Right.
I was there the day the Emperor was. Hold on.
I was slayed the Emperor.
Yeah,
It weren't that Emperor.
No,
Yeah.
no, but that because I didn't know that obviously in the end he actually does. So for me,
No spoilers for further book, but
oh yes, no, yeah, but this is.
Well, actually, we don't know yet, do we?
Do we know? Okay, but this is so apparently this was common knowledge, and I didn't know. And for me, it took me ages to get into the book because I was like, "What's going on?" Like, hold on a minute. He's meant to be loyal to the Emperor, and yet, who is this fake Emperor? And I just didn't get it. So, go. What was? Explain it to me.
Okay, so basically, from before the Emperor, the big Emperor, rose to power, humanity had spread out all over the galaxy, and then there were all sorts of nasty things happened, war with the Men of Iron and things like that, where AIs went rogue. This is all sort of backstory from like Rogue Trader era and things like that. And basically, humanity was splintered and all over the place. So what the Emperor is doing, essentially, is now he's conquered Earth. He's spreading his crusade around the galaxy to basically gather up the rest of humanity under his rule. And it's a case of and it's a case of your planet might have been doing perfectly fine for hundreds of thousands of years. You've got your emperor who's in charge of you and everything. But if Big E turns up on your doorstep with all his space marines and he says, "I'm in charge now," and you turn around and go, "No, we kind of like want to rule ourselves." He's like, "Nah, that's not happening." And that's the sort of thing where Horus slew the Emperor, because he was basically the Emperor of that planet that the Crusade turned up at.
And I get that now, but when I first started, I was like, hold on. It took me about 4 or 5 chapters to actually get into the book.
Yeah, the problem with that is I think it's designed around, they're assuming that people who start reading the Horus Heresy books have already got that little bit of background knowledge.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, just to say a bit about the heresy, it was an interesting challenge for a publishing company, let alone a single writer. And you've got to remember, this is set 10,000 years before the present setting. And like Mike just said, it's an attempt to explain how this, golden age of humanity under the Emperor has transformed from this, mythological utopia of advanced technology and all this into this horrifying, fascist, dark age where humanity is constantly, under threat of extinction. And, originally the Heresy was going to be like a trilogy or even like a several book series. We're now looking at 63 books, almost 30,000 pages, which began, with Dan Abnett back in 2006. So it's quite fitting, really, how Abnett is the one to bring it to a conclusion with, the end and the death, which is, come out this year.
Yeah, which I've got doing the second part to it.
It's not been announced yet, but yeah, they split it up into 2 books. Yeah. So I think currently now that the series, like I said, is 63 books. There's 55 novels, there's 8 short stories, there's 48 audio dramas, there's 2 art books, 2 scripts, and a graphic novel. It's massive. It really is.
And then there's also the little limited edition novellas that came out as well.
Yeah.
Which...
We'll get there.
Yeah, it's a huge undertaking, but like you said, they assume you kind of know the current 40k setting, and then they've gone back to try and flesh all this out. So
yeah,
and he writes with a lot of irony, you know. Well, especially Dan Abnett, he writes with a lot of irony, knowing that we know as readers what the characters don't.
I was in the same boat as Leanne when I started. I had a bit of a rough idea of what generally happened, but this book were kind of my proper introduction. So when it started, I was there when Horus slayed the Emperor. I was like, well, where the fuck is this going to go from here?
Start at the end.
Yeah.
But that's it. But when you said about the twist, I was like, I kind of get it. I don't. But was that it? Like he?
Yeah, that was the twist I meant.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Like picked up that it was a different.
It's just a play on words.
Emperor.
It was a massive kind of tongue-in-cheek joke that they shouldn't really be saying because, you know, it's blasphemy really to say the Emperor's dead. But that's why it was so kind of tongue-in-cheek.
So good.
Yeah.
But now that I've read more, like, and I understand it a lot more, and I know a bit more, I'm like, actually, that's really good. Like, it's really good. You read it, like, I read it back today for this, and I was like, yeah, that's good. Like, now that I know, I'm like, it's clever. It's very clever. Yeah.
If you were to spend the next 10 years reading all about, you know, Black Rabbit books, then you went back and read Horus Rising, you would see a lot more of that kind of thing in it, especially when he's talking about Abaddon and he's talking about, you know, other characters and so on. And he just laces in all this little bit of irony in a couple of sentences here and there, and you won't pick up on it unless you really know the story going forward.
So it'd be good. So if we're sorry. Pardon, sorry?
It is a good book to revisit when you've gone into the series.
That's what I was just going to say. Could you imagine? Like we're still going through. We go through all the books over the next few months, and in a year's time, we revisit this book, and then go, oh yeah, like I think we'd all have like a completely different view maybe on it. Definitely, but no, it took me a while to get into it. I don't know if it took everyone else a while to get into it, but it took me a good 4 to 6 chapters to really get into it and understand it.
Yeah.
I think it's like an opening for it, though. The pace of the first few chapters, the battle at the Imperial Palace and stuff like that, it's really well written and really well paced. I get what you mean, but it takes you a little while to get into the story proper, but I found that it were like quite a page turner. Yeah,
so when I was reading it, like when I was rereading it today, I was like, this is so much better now than when I first read it, because I literally knew nothing about anything, any of the story and anything. So now rereading it sort of today, I was like, actually, yeah, this is so much better second time around. How many times has everyone read it?
Loads.
About 4 times, I'd say.
Just one?
I only read it the once.
Yeah, first time.
Once?
Yeah.
So maybe, how long ago did everyone read it?
A week?
Times about a year.
Yeah, I finished it about a month ago.
Oh, okay. So, what we'll do is we'll go around the room and you can all say how long ago you first read it and also what you thought of the start of it as well, because I'd really like to know whether you had the same thoughts as I did or not, if you only read it a month ago or a week ago or whatever. So whoever wants to go first.
Okay, so like I say, I finished it about a month ago. and I've never really, until recently, thought much about reading any of the Black Library stuff. But I gave it a read, and the start in particular, I get what you say about it being fast paced, and it's straight away in your face. This is the battle, and I think it's written that way, especially again because of we said about Horus slew the Emperor, and it's like a little nod to you're supposed to know a bit about the setting before you read it. And I think the fast pace and everything, it's all designed to show you that you know that Space Marines are supposed to be these super soldiers, these genetically engineered supermen in tank armor. And it's written fast paced like that to demonstrate that that's exactly what they are.
Mm.
What I did struggle with initially was there's an awful lot of characters that happening at once right at the start, and I did initially struggle to keep track of who was who.
I still struggle, not gonna lie.
Do your books have the list of characters at the front of it?
Oh,
in your prints, does it have it?
Good question.
Some have the prints.
Oh.
Has that one got it?
Yeah.
I don't know. I've got the audiobook.
Oh, okay, so you could. I mean, when I first read it, I was forever going to the front of the book. Going, oh, that's who that is. You know, especially as the captains of the different chapters. Well, who's this guy? Okay, he's captain of the 10th. You know, and so on.
We should put that on the group.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah,
someone should take a picture. That would be great, because if people are listening through audiobook, which I know a lot of, like the first one I actually read, and the second one I've done audiobook, but the first one I had on Kindle, and I don't think they have that on Kindle either.
No, I've got it on I've got it on Apple Books, and it doesn't have that. It's straight in.
Yeah.
Because on that you've got 3 pages of obviously characters listed.
Yeah.
But that
would have been helpful. So next up, who's when you last read it?
So about a year ago.
Oh wow!
But I've been big on Black Library since I was a kid. So I had a couple of the old, obviously some of the old, I showed you an old book not so long since on this, maybe I'll put it somewhere else. Anyway, I digress. So I've got some of the very old Warhammer books before it became Black Library as it is now. But what really cemented it for me was Storm of Iron, which is an Iron Warriors book. Iron Warriors are a chapter. Oh, you'll know them as the Fourth League when you get to them. And that was written, was that 2002? So that was the book that did it for me for reading Black Library. And then life kind of gets in the way, but I'd always been interested in the Horus Heresy. And the very idea of you've got these super soldiers, these genetic perfect specimens who are supposed to be loyal and perfect, not deviate from the path of good, as it were. And they turned. And the reasons why they turned. For some, it's quite obvious that they just got brassed off of being the dog's bodies and doing all the hard work. Others were for glory, etc., etc. So I was in where was it? Woking, of all places, back in 2006. And I just popped into their local Games Workshop, as it was. And they had the first 3 books of the Heresy. So I picked up Horus Rising, False Gods, and I forgot the name of the third one.
Descent of Angels? No? Is that the fourth?
No.
Galaxy in Flames?
Third one.
That's going to bug me now. I'm going to find out which one.
Someone's going to find out for you.
My books are in the other room. I can't.
Mine are all on. Well, you just sent me the audio. The audio.
Anyway, that's it, guys. So I bought all three.
Galaxy in Flames.
I didn't start reading them though till 2007. Obviously, I already had foreknowledge of how the heresy came about. So I've only reread that a couple of times since. Most recent, obviously, being a year ago. In between, waiting for new releases to come out for me to get. You've obviously Leanne's already seen the picture of part of my bookshelf and was terrified by it.
Very expensive.
But this is what because it's a bit fuzzy. So he mentions about Horus slaying the Emperor. Am I right in thinking that individual doesn't actually get slain but taken prisoner?
Yes. It's very fuzzy.
Yeah, he's taken prisoner. I won't tell you anything else, but you find out he's quite an interesting character. He's
old, isn't he? He's old, and he asked to speak to... Who did he ask? He asked to speak to someone at the start.
Surrender to Horus himself, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was it. He wanted to surrender to him, and then someone went to or something.
Short story.
I don't know, does he?
There's a short story that elaborates on that whole scene.
Oh, okay, because it's very sort of... I think the scene's very rushed, isn't it? It's very rushed. There's not a lot of explanation. Loken's kind of thrown away, isn't he, to the side, and he can... And then obviously there was this big thing about someone coming down, and obviously if you don't know who Horus is at the time, it's like he kind of comes down and it's like, I think that was Horus, wasn't it?
No, there is a short story around that which happens at the same time, and I can't remember which. It's in one of the books stories, and it happens at the same time as that, but it's from that emperor's perspective.
Oh, okay.
And you find
that'd be a good one.
I'm not going to spoil it for you.
No, don't spoil it. Don't spoil it for the rest of us.
I'll say about this character is he comes more into it with regards to the Siege of Terror.
Okay, that's a long way off.
He's a long way off.
I'm on the 40th book at the moment. I'm on Korax.
Sorry, say it again?
I'm on the 40th book at the moment. Korax. But that's not happened yet, so it must be beyond book 40.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, again, same question. Go.
I first read it after the birth of my oldest daughter.
Oh.
How long ago was that?
She's just turned 10.
Oh.
We'd gone into WX Smiths while I was on paternity leave because she wasn't a sleeper at all. So I got...
Join the club.
Second daughter, so much better. Sleeping wise, we're both ace. For if you are listening. So I got through a lot of books. I got through the first 3 quite quickly, and we're then just kind of hooked in. Horus Rising is probably the book I've read the most because I get caught up,
Mm.
and then go back to the start and wait for another to come out. But then at some point, I've massively fallen behind. I don't know if quite a lot came out at the same time, or they realised how well it were doing and they were like rapid firing books out.
There's definitely some you don't need to read.
Yes.
In that series, you know. Don't get caught up on trying to read all 63 of them. There's some that are just, you know, either add nothing to the story whatsoever, or
filler.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of filler, isn't there?
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is why we have the book club.
Nipping Titlow and sorting the cat out.
Yeah.
But I think
what did you? Sorry, go on.
I reread through. Well, I say reread it. I skimmed back through it. Probably beginning of the month, just to refresh. Because with the first three, I don't know if anybody else who's read them will agree, because it's the same characters, which, without spoiler, it's really not later in the series. The first
blurs into one.
Yeah. So it was just
I found that.
It was just to kind of separate out what had happened in this first one rather than the later ones.
Yeah, and what did you think of the intro?
I loved it. Like I say, I had a very, very basic knowledge of 40k, Emperor in the Golden Throne, stuff like that. So after reading the first bit, I thought it was starting a lot later than it was.
Yeah, I didn't realise it was actually starting 40k, if that makes sense, until Ross said earlier.
I almost thought it was going to be a begin at the end, then like however many years earlier kind of thing.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I were wrong. I think they played it really, really well.
They did. It was amazing. And last but not least.
Yeah, so I'm with you. It was a lot to take in to start with, even having a little bit of background knowledge, because like you dropped in, Horus slay the Emperor, I was there, but you're also in the middle of a fight, and you're like, okay, so who's important here, who's not? I think the thing that I struggled with the most was so many names of characters who are all relatively important, but then they're referred to by their surname, their last name, and then other people are referring to them by their first name. And I'm like, oh, okay, so Loken and Gabriel are the same? No, they're different. Oh no, hang on, they are the same person. So it did take me a little bit. I had to reread the first chapter, I think twice, to try and spark like, okay, yeah, I'm going to get through this book. But I found it was really good. On retrospect, it's perfect because you're dropped in to the middle of a crusade. It's not, oh, this is how we started. This is happening, and this is how. It kind of shows you that this is what they do. And later in the book, I think when, not to get too far ahead, but when Horus is saying, let's try and cruise and not just go in for a fight, it's a really good contrast.
I love Horus.
So far.
I've got onto the second book and I'm pretty much a little bit through the third. So I'm not going to give too much away because we're talking about the first, but yeah, I'm gutted. Like, I love Horus in the first book. And then to go into the second book, because I'm not going to too much, devastated.
Well, but even Horus just knowing what happens at the end, like, he seems like
we're not talking about the end.
Oh, sorry. I meant like macro.
No, you can go. So you don't give any spoilers away.
No spoilers. But it just, he seems like such a, like he's just trying to do the right thing the whole time. He's got this immense amount of pressure on him, and then to know what does happen eventually is just terrible.
I know. It's devastating. Like, yeah, it is devastating.
Especially as you learn about the Primarchs. Because we all know the man children, and for Horus to be kind of nominated ahead of them all by his father has put a lot of pressure on him, really. because there's obviously Sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was going to say a lot of hatred from the
Well,
others.
yeah, there's some that would back him.
Jealousy.
There's some that think they could probably do a better job themselves, and you'll learn about them, as you go through. But for him to be nominated as the first, ahead of some of the other Primarchs, would the story have gone any different if another one had been the War Master? I don't know.
What, like
Dawn,
I don't know.
Gulliman or someone.
Should have been Sanguinius.
Well, with regards Sanguinius, have you read the Primax novel? Sanguinius?
Not yet.
Do it, because it's set around the same time as Horus Rising / Four Gods.
Yeah.
So
Really?
a bit of murder where they landed on.
Yeah.
It's the other side of it. So you already know, obviously, what happens. But this is the Blood Angel perspective.
Okay.
So,
Blood Angels wise, it was a disaster, wasn't it? Really?
yes.
But we're not going to talk about that because that will come next month. This month, it's all about Horus Rising.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Do you know what, though? I do think, like, I was properly gripped into Horus as a character. Like, I really liked Loken, and there was a few characters that I really, really liked, but I was gripped into him, and I think there's one part in it where he's... It's at the end, I think, and I know I'm skipping ahead, and we'll get there, but when he doesn't want to engage in fighting with is it the Interact?
Yeah.
And he's just so diplomatic about it, and he just seems, you can tell he hasn't gone over yet, and and then the second book ruined it for me.
It gets worse.
I can't.
But what that shows the way they've written his character is it shows he's charismatic. And it's at that point you start to see why he was chosen as War Master.
Yes. Yes, definitely.
He's not just like, for example, if you'd have picked the Lion, he would have been, ruthless. If you'd have picked Russ, it would have been just all-out carnage. And you see, and if you picked Gulliman, it would have just been all spreadsheets and things like that. Yeah. But that's the point where you start to see, well, this is why he's picked Horus as the War Master.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
because he's the rounded general.
Yeah. Because you also get references to Ferrus Manus of being his closest successor for being War Master.
Yeah.
I do wonder if the Emperor knew about the Mournival and that Horus surrounded himself with this unofficial kind of,
He must have done. He knows everything.
Yeah.
But does he?
Don't, because I think... Stop it. I know you are itching to talk more about other books. You're all dying to give more of the story.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to give an explanation to things that happen because you know them already. And to say, like, it was all Horus's fault and it was his choice and and so on, wouldn't be true.
And it's really hard as well to pick a side, I think. Like, in the first book, I am all for Horus and the Emperor and everything. But as you move on, blurred, like it's very blurry.
There's layers, and there's so many shades of grey. It's like especially if next month's book, obviously there's quite a lot of grey in there. Yeah. With regards individual, we're not going to mention.
We're not going to talk about that.
Well, it's already starting in this book. I mean, look at Loken. He's questioning
Yeah.
things already. He's got a really good relationship with the iterators, who question everything. Really, is kind of like a philosopher type of point of view, isn't it? Let's question everything. Couldn't they have just left them alone?
Yeah, they're almost. That's what surprised me as well about how much of a role they played in the book. They're almost like philosopher journalists in a way.
Yeah.
And it's like, it was interesting to see how they interact, because coming from the 40k standpoint, where Space Marines are supposed to be these nigh on demigod type figures that hardly anyone will ever see, to see them interacting with your average human, but in a respectful and almost reverent way in times, I found was really interesting.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. I agree, especially, I mean, why Loken? He seems like the only one out of the whole chapter, really, that kind of questions why on certain things. So
That's why.
I mean, it'd be interesting to see. Obviously, we don't know now, but Sejanus, who he replaced in the Mournival, would he have been the same sort of character? I don't know, because Loken replaced Sejanus as almost like a like for like. He was someone who would question.
Obviously, I don't know who Sejanus is.
He's the one who dies at the start.
Yeah, he was mentioned obviously at the start in the book, but apart from that,
You get a few more references to him, obviously, as 64 books. I think there's one or two short stories with him in it, and he's a similar character to Loken, but not, if you know what I mean. No, you won't know what I mean, because otherwise I'll give something away. But he's a similar type character, if you will, in the whole questioning thing. But he's also got an air of, how can I put it, an air of Abaddon about him, if memory serves me right, from what I've read.
Yeah, well, they say he was kind of like a mixture. He had the kind of, the ferociousness of Abaddon, but tempered as well. So.
It's like we were just talking about the is it the remembrances we were talking about?
Yeah. The iterators.
Yeah. The iterators and the remembrances. And did anyone else feel like, because it was fairly on in the book, I think, when who was it? And they said he died, but he didn't die.
Oh, the guy that got beaten up in the pub?
Yeah, what was his name? Because it's
Ignis Carse.
Yeah, he has a very big role, doesn't he, going through the book, especially into the second one. We won't mention it, but Ignis Carcassy, yeah?
Yeah, the poet.
Yeah, that's him.
He's almost like his conscience, isn't he?
Yeah, that was brutal in the first book when he was just, because it was like he died. And in the pub, wasn't it? And
I think they left it with he'd stopped breathing, and that was it.
It was from whoever beat him's point of view that he checked him and he was dead, and then but obviously he didn't die. That confused me a little bit, but he was. I really like him as a character, like questioning him, and I think they've got a massively important role. Healer. Yep. I kind of liked her in the first book. Obviously, she witnessed some crazy things, and some of it was actually really scary. Like is it the Whisperheads?
Oh, that was terrifying.
That was really, actually, it was like, it made me, give me the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah, because that was unheard of at that point, weren't it?
Yeah, like it was completely out of it was supernatural, which they don't believe in.
Yeah. It weren't meant to happen to Space Marines, were it? They were meant to be, like Christian said, the paragon of humanity. They weren't meant to start killing their brothers and turning mutants.
And you could feel how torn Locum was because he wasn't meant to shoot like on his own brother, was he? Or like hurt him or anything. And you could feel like he was so torn. Yeah, it was that really freaked me out.
Yeah, and another bit of irony there where Loken, I think it's in the Mournival bit where he's getting, recruited to the Mournival. He mentions Space Marines fighting Space Marines, and that it would never happen. Or the only thing that could beat another Space Marine is a Space Marine. So, Abnett's pretty
I didn't
clever.
pick up on that.
He goes back and he mentioned this kind of thing. But it's interesting as well that what was the guy's name who turned?
Jabal.
Yeah.
Jabal.
And the fact that he should have looked after the Temp Company whilst Locum was away on other business.
Yeah, instead of Viper.
Yeah. Well, the honour really should have gone to him first as first. Obviously, it's played on his mind, and he's opened himself up to other emotions, really.
That was a scary bit, though. Like it, just because it went away from everything that they believed in. I think that point in the book really set the ball rolling for all the coming events. That was the turning point in the book for me, and it was. I think it was good that they didn't involve. I keep wanting to call her Mercedes, but she's not. What's her name?
I think I called her that as well.
I call her Mercedes, but Mercedes. Well, that's Mercedes or whatever.
Alton.
They didn't. Alton. Yeah. So she's obviously a documentarist. For Loken, and she didn't get to go on that one because I can't remember why. She just didn't make it, did she? And I think that was really clever that they didn't do that.
I think it was something to do with Karski.
Was she looking after he'd got beaten up?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. But I think it was clever because she didn't witness what Keeler did. And then that follows on a lot more from that as we move into the second book, which I thought kind of tied in really, really well. Obviously, I can't say, when you want to elaborate more on Keeler and what she did, I can't because of what she witnessed with Jabal.
And with this, you've also first witnessed Samus, who is will always team.
Who is he? Sorry, say that again.
Samus, the god of murder.
The whisperhead voice.
Yes. So with him, and he's like, I could be your friend or whatever he said. Can't remember the exact words. That was good. That was a really good bit that had me gripped.
Yeah, he ain't gone, by the way.
Well, don't. Okay, no, we won't talk about.
To be fair, on that, I was waiting the entire book for Keeler or somebody else to start referring to themselves as Seamus. Like it got in my head straight away, and I could not drop it. I was just waiting for it to come back the whole way through.
So was I. Have you read the second book?
No, it should get here on Tuesday.
Okay, you're gonna love the second book. Just that's all I'm saying. Because I liked this book, but the second book really, you're gonna love it. Read it quickly.
Yeah, the first 5 books or so are kind of what you need to read, and then after that, I feel that you can branch out to different, pick and choose which ones you want to read. Really, but the first 5 are pretty much gonna get where we are now.
It starts being chronological, doesn't it? and starts just being all over the place.
Yeah.
All over the shop.
Some people would say skip Fulgrim, but I personally wouldn't. I would, because it does, have a lot of events that I feel like are quite important.
Yeah, I've heard that the first 4 work chronological, and then you can kind of just pick and choose kind of thing because they jump all over the place. So we can always decide, can't we?
Fulgrim, for me, the first 5 are your main ones, because with 5, the 5th one, which is Fulgrim, that's a different POV to everything. That's everything gone on in 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. But it's a little bit more condensed, if you will, because it deals with the Emperor's children. So you find out more about Saul, Lucius, obviously Fulgrim himself, their remembrances, who are not like the remembrances that you've got on the Vengeful Spirit, is all I'm saying.
No spoilers.
I'm saying.
What did everyone else think of the book in general? Because I know we're getting on a bit now. I don't know what time we've got, but we're getting on a bit now.
As a first Horus Heresy novel, it was fantastic. Like once you got through the first bit, it was really good. I've only read 2 other 40k Black Library novels, but this was fantastic. I really liked the mix of having obviously the Space Marines, but I think the remembrances and all that, I think they were great because they allowed more free avenues of exploring different opinions, because the Space Marines are so doctrinated, even though they have a bit of breadth. I thought it was a really good extension instead of having them just front and center the whole time. So I thought it was a really comprehensive introduction.
It really does its job of introducing the start of the heresy as it was, or introducing the setting and making you want more. And I'd agree again with because of the inclusion and the focus quite a lot on the iterators and the remembrancers, that it adds that extra bit of humanity to it, and sort of takes it away from what could otherwise just be a military novel.
Yeah.
I loved it. Dan Abnett is definitely one at best at what he does. The balance of the Space Marines for the action and the iterators and remembrances for the human element, like others have said, worked really well. It stopped it just being another sci-fi action book. Leaves a lot of unanswered questions.
Yes.
Introduces a lot of concepts, but they do all. You kind of know where it's going. Introduces one of my favourite characters in the world, in Erebus.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Fantastic book. Very well written.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I agree.
Me too.
Especially that, that first sentence of the book. I found it, it's very effective, really, in kind of just setting your expectations as well, and a bit of confusion. And then, like you've all said about the iterators, you've got to add this human element, otherwise Space Marines just don't seem to have that kind of gravitas, really. And the same with any of the books in the Black Library. Personally, I like reading the ones to do with just your general, odds and sod people, really. Like some of the new horror books that have come out are about like just the police forces on certain planets,
Yeah.
that kind of thing, without having to deal with the Space Marines all the time. You want to know, how does your Bobby Basic human get on in this huge universe where everything's against them, really. So the fact that they put these remembrances in, just to add that human element, really. Not everyone can be a Space Marine.
Yeah, and I think if they had left them out, I think what you see in quite a few Black Library novels that are just Space Marines, it's like brother, bolter, heretic, brother, bolter, and that's pretty much the book for like 200 or 300 pages. Without them in, that could have been exactly how this went.
They bring a bit of emotion, like a human emotion. Like if you look at Mercedes, and she actually, I think, fancies Loken.
Oh, undoubtedly, there is.
There's there's that, but that's a human kind of thing, isn't it? That's like it's an emotion and the fear and everything. Whereas they don't feel that. Yeah.
Sense of awe. Who was your worst light character?
Oh, we all know that, Erebus.
Yeah,
I
am not a fan of Erebus.
Seems unanimous.
I am going into brain here. I absolutely love the character.
As a character, I can see knowing what happens later. As a character, I can absolutely see, but no, don't like him.
Not in the first book. So we're talking about the first book. I don't like him. He's a very small part in the first book. So I don't like him in the first book. Doesn't mean I don't like him as it comes along. But in the first book, absolutely not. Hate him.
I mean, especially with that particular character and the fact that a little bit of foreshadowing, he's still the same shit now, but worse. Because obviously when you have the word bearers, and the word bearers as they are now, you've basically got what used to be Erebus and Corferon, who's supposed to be like that, have now gone to seeing which one can kill the other one, and they have their own little groups. Some of the word bearers books in the present universe, and there's a strong divide between whether you're like Team Erebus or Team Corferon. Is quite amusing because they're all, even when they're working together, trying to outdo each other.
Yeah.
It's twirl the moustaches to the extreme, and it's absolutely brilliant. It's quite humorous. That's why I love the character so much, because you know what he is. You know what he's going to do. It's just, how does he get to that point?
But do you know what he's going to do? Like,
we know because we've got a knowledge of the law, but people coming into it have no idea.
Like you. Oh no, sorry. We'll cover this on the next one because it's too good for this one. It's too much. So, like, we'll carry on with your question, Ross. The characters that you hated.
I don't care for Keela.
Who said that?
Me. She just doesn't do anything for me. Even.
And you know what she does in the second book.
Yeah. I know what she does in the Siege of Terror as well, but we're not going there.
We're not going there. At least she doesn't die. Spoiler.
I'm just like, no.
Anyone else? Characters that they don't like?
Eidolon.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Yeah, he's...
Yeah. He's just written as an ego in power armor, isn't he?
Yeah.
Which is weird.
Yeah, his helmet is bigger than everybody else's helmet to fit that.
Ego.
It's interesting the way he is, considering they strive for perfection. How can he miss the mark so much, really?
Yeah, how can you not be attracted to an Emperor's children that's supposed to be so glorious, and he's just the biggest egomaniac.
I do think it's one of my favourite interactions in the book when Torgadon drops onto murder and has
yeah.
with Eidolon and absolutely tears him apart. He's so mellow to start with. Then Eidolon starts talking, and it just becomes done. It's like, shut your mouth. Do you know who I am? Don't care who you are.
Yeah, the grown-ups talking now. Shut up.
Yeah, children.
Do you know who my mate up there is? Horus. Yeah, Josh.
Have it.
He's not happy.
Oh dear. Oh dear. So now that we've gotten to the worst, like your least favorite, what's your best favorite character in this book? In this book, okay.
Easily Torgadon. He's just so, like you said, so chill, but he's got a lot of grunt behind him.
He's
very
funny.
likable. Yeah.
He's a joker.
I can see that. I mean, for me, Loken is essentially, he's written as the good guy. So he's written the way that you are supposed to like him anyway. But I do, and I also like, there is the slight, because he seems different to the others, and he is that more questioning. That's kind of why I like him as a character.
I'm a bit torn between Cinderman and the Harford.
I was going to say Harford's my favourite. Yeah. I wish he had a bigger role. Well, you know, this guy's he's been around since the inception of the Lunar Wars. He was when the Unification Wars were going on. You know, the fact that none of them actually listened to him is, you know, it's a bit of a disservice to him, really. You know, he's ancient.
Yeah,
really.
It's almost like he's the old grandpa that they sort of just pay lip service to, isn't it?
Exactly.
When they should really be listening to him because he's been there and he's done it.
Exactly.
Quite a bit in the tank once down the line, but he can certainly back it up. But you'll get to that. Cinderman again. He's another character. He's another one that I have a soft spot. Me as a behave. I wish. Me as a one who likes to read. I try to avoid your main characters. I'm more about the supporting cast, because if your supporting cast is good, it's the same with like films. If they're good, your main characters are going to be brilliant, in theory. Because without the supporting cast, that main character is nothing. So Loken I like, but I lean towards those in the background because some of them, although they're in the background, are as much in the background as you think they are.
Do you like Loken more with Vipers?
I like Vipers.
I'm trying to remember the character.
He's the one that takes over the Jabal should have.
Yeah.
But
like any other rank, the sergeants is like a kind of thankless task. You know, they pretty much hold the chapters together, really, all the squads, and you know, they don't get the same sort of glory as the captains do or whatever.
Yeah.
They're just,
as a former sergeant myself, I know that they're the ones that get the stuff done. That the captains and everything tell you to do the things, and then the sergeants are the ones that actually make it happen.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't care how you do it, just get it done.
Yeah.
So, I want to wrap it up now because we've been on, I'm sure, a lot longer than an hour. We're going to talk about the ending and how everyone felt about the ending and Erebus? Go on, I can see you clapping your hands. Go, go, go.
It's just, for me, because I kind of cheated a little bit before we went on, I reread the ending.
So did I.
Freshen it up, and the little voicemail went, because obviously we know we all know now what is coming. And yeah, everyone completely blissfully unaware of what is about to go down, whilst in the little corner. Yes.
Yeah. Shit's gonna hit the fan.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
It does come out. It's like everybody's really getting on. Oh, look, I've made a friend with the Interrex. Hand over your weapons. Massive fight and withdrawal.
Yeah. I'm interested to know. You said you've got the audiobook of it. How does he come across in the audiobook? Because I'm imagining like I'm imagining he would sound like a Dick Dastardly sort of figure. That sort of mustache twirling, evil sort of. That's how I'm imagining he'd come across.
You're pretty much spot on. You're pretty much spot on.
But it doesn't give you any sort of nuance of, oh, he might be good. You never. But it's just like, no, this is the bad guy.
I'll put it in the group. I'll voice record it or something and put it in the group, and you can listen. He's evil. You just know he's evil. Like, to the point where is the Anna thing, when he, like, obviously at that point we don't know he steals the Anna thing. It's him, and then obviously it goes to the basement somewhere, and Erebus is there looking at the Anna thing, and then he puts it, and you're just like, you bastard! It was you, and you are on their side. What are you doing? Like, it ended for me. It ended on a real cliffhanger, and I was like, I put down that book and I literally picked up the next one then and there, because I could not wait. And I got through the next one in a week and a bit. Because I just needed to know what happened. It left it on such a cliffhanger for me.
The build up to the Interrex bit, I thought were a nice change of pace as well, because all through the book, Space Marines, Primarchs, we go in, we destroy.
Yeah.
Horus have
against this roadblock.
Yeah, I want to speak to them. They're different, but does that mean they're wrong? Kind of thing. But seeing how many of his closest advisors were like, even like Abaddon, who's like his second in command, no, you're doing it wrong. We need to destroy him. To have Horus, because ultimately, right at the start, you know where it's going. It's called the Horus Heresy. To have him as that kind of level, let's think about this.
Yeah, I also think that's interesting, because that sort of thing, because he's almost questioning the mission, and the mission is conquest. And he's almost like going, well, maybe we don't have to. So he's just that little bit of straying away from what the Emperor was intending him to do, just by that bit. And that's where, like you say, you like Horus as a character, because he doesn't come across as a bad guy. He's almost sounds reasonable. So that makes you start thinking, well, which is the bad side on this one?
And that's what I mean. Like, Horus, he went down, and he wasn't even in his battle armor or anything. He was just he went to talk in plain clothes, or whatever he went to. He wasn't geared up for a war or a fight or whatever. He was going down to negotiate and be a part of it. And
do you think it's the Emperor who, is he actually saying everything has to be 100% compliance? Or do you feel like since he went back, they're just kind of doing it the way they think or interpret his wishes to be? Because the Emperor, you've got to remember, is supposed to be the most intelligent person ever. Why not make vassals, or, make allies? Why has everyone got to be brought 100% compliance or die?
Power hungry.
Even at that point, he's not, is he? Because you've got the Mechanicus, who
Yeah.
weren't
Allies. They're almost allies of convenience, aren't they?
Yeah. If he's done it for them, would he be prepared to do it for other groups?
I'm sure that's in the second. That's in the second book, though, isn't it? With the Mechanicus, I'm sure that is. Is it not?
Well, possibly, yeah, but bear in mind that they've been on this crusade for 200 years before this book even starts. So we're just I know it's a bit of a question really, but why? Same sort of thoughts that Logan's had really. Why have we got to kill everyone?
Yeah, and that's what got me as well. Like, why? When was it Mercedes? She said, but why didn't you just leave them alone? That was on the first planet. I know we're getting back to the start again, but why didn't you just leave them alone? It was kind of like, why didn't you? Like, they weren't hurting anyone.
We were almost looking at a question, weren't it? Loken pretty much chucked her out after that, didn't he? It was.
That's what made him think more.
And that's put the doubt in his mind.
Yes. So, sorry, we'll get on to carry on about the ending because we haven't heard what some of you think about the ending.
I thought it was a really good way to show the strain on Horus. Like, they are put as these, literal demigods. But they're all full of doubt. They're trying to do it a different way. But it's really good to show how much pressure he's under and how many people he has to try and appease, and he's trying to interpret this basically divine mission and will. Like you said, if the Emperor was here, would he have done it? If the Emperor put him in charge, why wouldn't he trust his interpretation of the mission? Why can't he make amendments to it? But then all that stuff like happening in the deep dark corners of the ship were just brilliant setup for the next book. I can't wait for it to get here.
Does make you wonder how much autonomy Horus has. What was the orders given to him by the Emperor when he went back, and the fact that the Emperor never really tells them why he's going back. Maybe if he just took the time to explain things, they might have dealt with it different, because they just see it as him leaving them to it.
Yeah, and ultimately the fact that chaos exists and the Emperor knows that, but
we don't know about that.
Yeah, but he hasn't told anybody.
No, and that's what I mean. So we are only sort of kind of introduced to chaos very, very briefly in that first book. Like, we don't know what it is or how deep it goes.
That's why it's such a surprise when it happens. And none of them know what it is, and this is the whole supernatural element, and they don't realize that it's there, and yet the Emperor knew about it all along.
Well, he's still it, but
you're the worst. You are the worst for spoilers.
Eager.
We should get one of them things that put over his mouth that say spoiler alert and beep it out.
I'll go back.
When they do.
I'll have to edit the whole video now and
beep,
filter
beep,
it.
beep. So, Ross, do you have anything that you want to add as a final thing, or anyone wants to add as a final thing, so we can wrap our first book review up?
I mean, it's been pretty good hearing all your thoughts. I'm sure we can fine tune it as we go forward. Doing different reviews and so on. For me, no, it's been great. It's good to hear. I suppose going forward we could streamline it and get to the questions sooner. So, because if you go off on a tangent, you know what this is like. We've done it about 20 times tonight. The world is so big, and one thing leads to another, and then to another, and to another. Next thing you're talking 6 books down the line. So, but once we get to a level playing field, like 5-6 books in, and we kind of know what's going on, it'll be easier to not spoil things for people.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. absolutely. Like it's hard at the moment because, like, obviously I can't relate to what's going on like 50 or 30 or even 10 books in advance. But as we get a little bit more into it, we can relate back to the first book and how they all relate to each other. But this has been fantastic for me to understand it a little bit better, and the world around it. Because obviously the Horus Heresy is only part of the whole thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's ultimately we're telling it's telling the story now of why things in 40k are now like they are.
Yeah, absolutely. Does anyone else have anything they want to add that they liked about the book? Anything that you want to add about the book? I'm talking to you.
One thing I was going to say before is... Oh, go on. You're all right. I was just going to ask about alternative protagonists. Do you think anyone else could have filled that role as Loken? If the story was to follow any other character, who could it have been?
Half-Third, maybe?
Who, sorry?
The Half-Third.
Possibly, yeah.
He's not really talked about that much in the first book, has he? He's not... I wouldn't say he's like a main role, is he, in the first book?
No. But...
He's more...
If, for example, when Sejanus dies, instead of Loken, Horus thinks to himself, actually will go more towards who's been and done it. He could have brought the Half-Third more into the light, but he chose not to.
Well, bear in mind, Half-Third has been there since the inception of the Lunar Wolves. How come he's not been up for Mournival promotion multiple times, really? Has he just not got the qualities needed, or is he just... I mean, he's a captain, isn't he? So it's not like he's just a rank-and-file soldier. He's obviously got his own...
Or is he too old and weak?
I don't know.
With having two other veterans in the group, is he that person in the corner of a mess who just spins dits about the Falklands when you're getting ready to deploy to Afghan? Do you get what I mean? It's had his time, but it's not relevant to what they're doing.
You could say the same about Dante, couldn't you?
Or do they think it's not relevant to what they're doing now?
Yeah.
Yeah. He has a bigger part further along, I think, doesn't he?
He's not a Chthonian either, is he?
No. He's
the Half-Third. Yeah, because he was there when the unification was.
Yeah. So he's not one of the club, is he?
No, he wasn't born on
the home world. He's
not.
And from what I understand, that's a thing going forward in a lot of the legions. There's the divide between the ones that were there on Terra and the ones that aren't.
If I may add, there are Terran-born Astartes in the Legion who actually became traitors. Like the Night Lords, for example, there were some Night Lords with what was it called? Not Sevatar, Telos, with Telos, who were actual Terran-born Astartes who were considered renegade.
That went over my head. I'm too new for that.
Yeah, that's
I'm so sorry.
Down the line.
Yeah.
Down the line. I'll get there in the end. But right now, no spoilers. Like I said, no spoilers. Yeah, that went completely over my head. And it just goes to show how much there is to learn and know and read about. Like, because it's not just about reading about the stories as well. You've got, like, I think, all the lore behind everything as well, which is
Absolutely.
So much.
Yeah, and like you go first. Sorry.
No, you go.
Okay, thank you. But the interesting thing is that, like, while there's like 700 like or something books based on Warhammer and Horus Heresy. The thing about it is that like you really got to look into like which books are like ones to really look out for, because there has been from like the reviews I've seen from like there's this YouTube channel that goes for Horus Heresy stuff. Let me look him up. In the meantime, I'm just gonna like what I mean is that like there are some books who in the Horus Heresy that like specifically talk about the Space Marines, but fail to grasp the humanity of the Astartes. Kind of like unlike in Horus Rising, where you have characters like Loken, Torgaten. I mean, you can arguably say like Abaddon in this book is like is very very human, in the sense that like normally like in like just a heads up, you're going to see the negative trend of what I meant in a lot of the Ultramarine books in Horus Heresy, like a lot, and because a lot of the stereotypical Space Marines are like, for the Emperor, I'm going to destroy the Xenos and the heretics, ah! But whereas
Bolter, brother, Bolter, heretic,
kind of like that. But and I think like the charm with Horus Rising, especially Horus Rising, is that like there is a fair amount of human characters in the story that really give it life.
Yeah, definitely. I think is it Torgaten?
Yeah.
Yeah. He is just so human to me. Like he's a joker. He's funny. He's always messing around. He brings the human side to it, I think, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. He literally hugs Loken and was it Little Horus? I think it was Little Horus.
I can't remember.
He literally hugs Loken and Little Horus before going on Planet Murder, and he was like, "Yo, bros, we gotta do a group hug. We gotta do a group hug before we go."
I don't remember that bit, but I'm gonna have to go back and find it.
Oh, for sure.
So I think if anyone doesn't have anything else to say, we should wrap up our first book review, because we have gone on way longer than an hour, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely.
But it has been fantastic, and I've really, really enjoyed it. And I now can't wait to our second one, so we can absolutely discuss more about the second book, because I think that is the game changer. That was that's what explained a lot of the first book. So I can't wait for that. So the next one is False Gods.
30th of April, I think we penciled in for.
Yeah, False Gods, as displayed right there. We're going to pencil it in for the 30th of April. We haven't put a time in yet, but that will become apparent. Hopefully we'll get a time in, but there's a reason why I haven't penciled a time in yet, but I will hopefully, fingers crossed, it'll be good. That's what I'm saying. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Just all keep your fingers crossed.
Definitely.
And if it's not, this will still be good.
Before we wrap this up, can we all just like shout Lupercal?
Oh, what's the Aquila sign? Is the Aquila sign like this?
I still do it in various ways, yeah. Some of them.
Hold on, before we do that, let me just get my helmet real quick.
Okay, go. Is someone? But what about if you don't support horror?